Thomas the tank engine was looking depressed. He was shunting some trucks round the yards of the workstation. "It's not fair at all," he groaned, shunting some of the trucks miserably into a siding. The trucks grumbled and moaned as they knocked into each other as they touched the buffers. Thomas ignored them and backed away, looking even more forlorn, if that was possible. "What's not fair?" a voice piped up from the sidings. Thomas looked up. Some of the Oakham Road engines, Tom, Ross, and the newest addition, Chelsea, were resting nearby, waiting for the stone trucks Edward was bringing up from the junction via Farquhar. The stone was needed to build up the harbour wall at Queen's Wharf, some of which Thomas had just delivered. Thomas had barely even noticed they were there. "Are you all right, Thomas?" Tom asked. "You look a little down." "Down is right," said Ross. "You look like you're on the scrap line." Thomas glared at him. "Ross!" exclaimed Chelsea. "Now you've gone and done it," Tom hissed. "What did I say?" Ross asked defensively. "You've upset the poor engine," Chelsea scolded. "Now apologise." "I don't even know what I've done," Ross retorted. "Why is he so down anyway?" The three engines forgot their quarrel and turned back to Thomas. The blue tank engine hadn't moved ever since he backed off from the trucks, and looked just as downcast as before. "Thomas?" asked Tom. Ross looked ashamed of himself. I'm sorry, mate. I didn't mean to—" "It's all right," Thomas said quietly. "It wasn't you, Ross. It's just that—" He trailed off, going silent once more. "Tell us," Chelsea asked. "Sometimes it helps to talk to friends." Thomas stayed quiet for a moment. At last, he sighed, took a deep breath, and told his story. "A diesel came in from the other railway this morning," he began. "He brought the express to the junction just as I pulled up. He took one look at me and sneered. 'I thought your sort were all gone,' he said. Of course, I didn't take him seriously. 'There must be something wrong with your eyes then,' I said. 'You'd have to be blind to think steam engines were all gone, especially on Sodor.' The diesel just sniffed. 'I'm not stupid, Kettle,' he fumed. 'I know for a fact that some old folks such as those preservation people and that fat controller who runs this out-of-date railway sees more need to preserve outdated technology. I was referring to your class, not your type.' 'What do you mean?' I asked. The diesel just sneered. 'Exactly what I said, Kettle. I recognise your shape. One of the E-class engines. All of which, aside from one or two, are gone. Scrapped. Extinct.' He smirked. 'How do I know? I worked on the same region as them, the southern region, and I was one of the many diesels lumbered with the task of dragging your brothers off to the breaker's yard. Good riddance to bad rubbish, if you ask me.' 'Well, no one is asking you, though, are they?' I retorted. I was shocked at what he had just said, but I tried not to show it. 'You can argue all you like,' the diesel continued, 'but you can't argue with the facts. We modern engines outdated your sort from the main line and turned the remains into molten slag, to be made into something more useful. All 10 of them. Although it appears we missed one.' That's when the guard's whistle blew, and the diesel left, still smirking. I finished my journey, and then came here with the trucks," Thomas finished. The Oakham Road engines were shocked. "The nerve of him!" Chelsea exclaimed. "What a cad!" Ross fumed. "Take no notice of him, Thomas," said Tom. "True, there are, unfortunately, still some nasty diesels in the world, but what do they know?" "Every barrel has its bad apples," added Chelsea. "I had a particularly nasty piece of work in my old yard named Frederick, and look where he ended up." "That diesel's just full of hot air, and a very nasty attitude," said Ross. "Don't take what that one good-for-nothing diesel says too seriously, mate. It's just a load of old rubbish, and so is he. Unfortunately, not all of it is, Thomas said, still looking a little low. I asked my driver and fireman too. They both told me the same thing. What the diesel said is true. My brothers, young and old, are all gone. They've all been scrapped. And now I am the only one of my sort left. The engines were silent for a moment. Chelsea at last broke the silence. "Thomas," she breathed with a gasp. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you," Thomas smiled slightly. "It all happened a long time ago. I just never thought I couldn't believe that I was the only one left." "It's been quite a few years since me and Tom were withdrawn," Ross ventured. "How could you not know?" The other two engines hissed at him for his lack of tact, but Thomas interrupted. "It's been a long time since I first came to Sodor," he said, "and my old home is a long way away from here. I simply never saw them again." Thomas stared into space and let out a mournful sighing wheesh. "I miss them all dreadfully," he sighed sadly. "What were their names?" asked Ross, intrigued. "Tom and I worked on the southern region. We might have met or worked with two of them." Thomas gave a sad smile. "I was the only one of my class to be given a name, and that was after I was brought here to Sodor," he explained. He then paused. "Although," he said thoughtfully, "one of my brothers was named as a reward for his bravery a few years ago. His name was Leo." "Leo!" Tom exclaimed suddenly. "Ah, I remember now. An engine with that name that looked almost exactly like you worked at Southampton along with me. It must have been one of your brothers." "What do you mean by almost exactly like?" asked Ross. "Surely they'd all look the same as or identical to Thomas." Thomas chuckled. "My class was sort of like yours in a way," he explained. "Your brothers had both small and long boilers. Mine had short and long extended side tanks, like mine. But the men at the works gave me a slightly different shape when I first came to Sodor. And then again a few years later," he added, remembering coming uninvited to breakfast in the station master's house at Farquhar. "What a funny name," Chelsea mused. "Leo. My driver knows about Leos. They're in the back of newspapers every so often, along with the crosswords. Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio. It just sounds like gibberish to me." "Those, Chelsea, are horoscopes," Thomas explained. "The Leo you're thinking of is a constellation of stars in the shape of a lion. That's what Leo means. Lion." "How in the world did he get a name like that?" asked Tom, intrigued. "I'd never asked him back then." Thomas smiled. "Let me tell you a story," he began, "about an engine whose bravery named him for the symbol of the other railway." The three engines listened intently. "But I mustn't tell you any more, or I shall spoil the next story."